So in the last video, I derived the equations of motion for a double pendulum using Newtonian mechanics. It was both ungodly horrific and incredibly satisfying. I asked at the end if anybody has a suggestion for a future video, and this one very decent sir asked for a spring pendulum, another classical system which is usually solved with Lagrangian approach. To be honest, he didn't specify that he wanted me to solve it with forces, so I was left with a choice. Do I chicken out and solve it in a minute and a half with Lagrange, or do I completely lose my mind again with Newton?
Jeez, rat poison!
Oh yeah, red poison it is. Now, all things considered, this system isn't nearly as painful to deal with using forces as double pendulum was. First of all, there are less forces that affect this system and there is only one bob, so we will have only two equations of motion, but the more important reason is that since this is basically a simple pendulum attached to a spring rather than a rod, instead of tension, we have an elastic force acting on a bob, and we already know the expression for the elastic force, assuming the spring obeys Hooke's law. But we'll get to forces later. Let's now define our system and impose all the necessary restrictions. So we have a spring of natural length L and spring constant K, which is connected to a fixed point, which we'll choose as the origin for the reference frame in which we're going to track the motion of the system. The x-axis is horizontal with positive direction to the right, and the y-axis is vertical with the upwards direction being positive. At the other end of the spring we have a point-like bob of mass m, and that's our system. The motion of the system is restricted to this xy plane. We wish to solve this in finite time, so of course we will ignore the effects of air resistance, and we will also forbid this spring from bending. In fact, we're going to absolutely annihilate almost all of the characteristics of the spring. We will require that it obeys Hooke's law, so the elastic force always depends linearly on displacement, and we will assume the spring is massless, so it doesn't contribute any additional inertia to the system. If you think this is an overkill and only accept hyper-realism, may I suggest consulting the Walt Disney Company. Dad! Now let x and y be the coordinates of this bob so we can write its position vector r as r equals x hat plus y hat, where x and y hat are just unit vectors in the x and y directions respectively. We could, in theory, handle this in pure Cartesian coordinates, but it is way too much of a pain in the ass, so we will choose some more appropriate coordinates to tackle this. Just as in simple pendulum, we will define the angle that the spring closes with the vertical and call it theta. But unlike the simple pendulum, however, this bob has both degrees of freedom that come from the existence in a two-dimensional space. That's because the spring can stretch and compress, so we have to know either the two Cartesian coordinates or the angle which the spring closes with the vertical, theta, and by what amount was the spring stretched or compressed. And that change in spring's length we will denote with S. S is positive if the spring stretches and negative if the spring compresses. The total length of a spring in every given time is then its natural length L plus displacement S. Now we can write down the expressions for Cartesian coordinates and the position vector in terms of theta and S. Using basic trigonometry, we find that x is equal to L plus S sine theta and y is equal to minus L plus S cosine theta. We can write the position vector in the following way now. R is equal to L plus S sine theta x hat minus L plus S cosine theta y hat. Now that we've done that, let's remember what we are actually trying to do. Write down the equations of motion for this system. We'll use Newton's second law, of course, F equals ma, though instead of a we will write r double dot as acceleration is just the second derivative of the position vector with respect to time, and the dots represent how many times was function differentiated with respect to time. Since we have already defined the position vector, we're just going to differentiate it twice. Before we proceed, let's just substitute L plus S for r, and the reason for that will become apparent as we go along. L is constant, but S is a function of time, so R is a function of time as well, and we have to keep that in mind while differentiating this function. First, we need to find R dot. By using the chain rule, we find that R dot is equal to R dot sine theta plus R cosine theta, theta dot in parentheses, x hat, plus minus R dot cosine theta plus R sine of theta, theta dot in parentheses, y hat. And we can now find r double dot by differentiating this, and oh boy, is this going to be a lovely expression. We now carefully use the chain rule again, and this is the resulting acceleration function. It has 8 terms, 4 in each Cartesian direction. Let's notice that there are similar non-trigonometric factors in both parentheses. For example, there is a factor with r double dot in both parentheses. There is the r theta dot squared factor in both parentheses. There is this weird 2r dot theta dot factor in both parentheses, and the r theta double dot factor. If we factor all of these, our acceleration function is the same, but it is a little rearranged. But why would we do this? Doesn't it look a lot more complicated now? Couldn't we just plug the previous expression into Newton's second law and just easily resolve it into 2 components? Well, yes, absolutely. But I did this to introduce an important concept we frequently use in more advanced physics: non-Cartesian coordinate systems. As some of you already know, there are many ways to express the position of some object. For example, we don't use the Cartesian coordinates to determine positions of objects on Earth. We use latitudes and longitudes, which are expressed in degrees. We express the position of a number in a complex plane with its distance from the origin and the angle which its position vector closes with the positive side of the x-axis. And we are going to use a similar concept here. We can determine the position of the bob in any given time if we know how far away from the origin it is and what angle does the spring close with the negative side of y-axis. And that is why we introduced the theta angle and the s coordinate, but also why we substituted L plus S with R, because R is the total distance from the origin in any given time. And those are the 2 coordinates in the so-called polar coordinate system. Usually the 2 coordinates in a polar coordinate system are distance from the origin and the angle which the position vector closes with the positive side of x-axis, with the angle value increasing as we go counterclockwise. Here we have essentially the same thing. The angle value increases as the bob swings counterclockwise, but here we start from the negative side of y-axis. That is important because as we now have 2 new coordinates, we can define the unit vector r hat in the direction of r increasing with theta fixed, and the unit vector theta hat in the direction of theta increasing with r fixed, just as x hat is the unit vector in the direction of x increasing with y and usually also z fixed, for example. In this sketch, r hat is pointing radially outwards, while theta hat is pointing in the direction of the increase of theta, and they are perpendicular to each other because then we can express any vector in this coordinate system in terms of their components in the r hat and theta hat directions. The issue here is that these 2 unit vectors, unlike the Cartesian ones, change as the position of the bob changes. For example, the system can be found in this position in a few seconds. This is now the direction of r increasing with theta fixed, and this is the direction of increasing theta with r fixed. Now, how to find the expressions of these unit vectors in terms of Cartesian unit vectors? Well, by definition, r hat is in the direction of the position vector, and we can find it by dividing that position vector with the magnitude of said vector to get the expression for r hat. We see that r hat is then equal to sine theta x hat minus cosine theta y hat. If we use the standard polar system, where the angle is measured counterclockwise from the positive side of x-axis, r hat would be different, and this is why we couldn't just use those expressions. Now we need to find theta hat. Theta hat is always perpendicular to r hat, and it is rotated counterclockwise by 90 degrees with respect to it in all time. That means we can write theta hat as sine theta plus 90 degrees x hat minus cosine theta plus 90 degrees y hat, which is, when we use some trigonometric identities, equal to cosine theta x hat plus sine theta y hat. This is a very loose way of determining this unit vector. It is correct and logically consistent, but there is a more rigorous way to determine its value, but that will require introducing Jacobians and more of the advanced math and theory of non-Cartesian systems, and I frankly don't want to get into that here. It is kind of irrelevant to what we're trying to achieve here, and there are many videos and literature explaining this concept if you are more interested in it. We can now see that these expressions for r hat and theta hat appear in our acceleration function. The parentheses that multiply r double dot give us r hat, and so do the ones that multiply r theta dot squared, while parentheses that multiply 2r dot theta dot and r theta double dot give us theta hat. And now we have our acceleration function expressed in unit vectors of polar coordinates. And now we can finally turn the forces. And luckily, this part is now super easy, as we only have gravity Fg pointing straight down and the elastic force from the spring acting along the spring away from the bob, assuming the spring is stretched. The elastic force is thus in the negative r hat direction, and because the spring can't bend, doesn't have a component in theta hat direction. The gravity is always downward, and we can find its component with simple trigonometry. So now we have elastic force is equal to minus ks r hat, and Fg is equal to mg cosine theta r hat minus mg sine theta theta hat. And now we're able to write down Newton's second law. We will have two equations, one for each coordinate, and since there are no unknowns outside of theta and r coordinates, we're done. This is it. Actually, the original coordinate was s, so let me just substitute that back in, and now we're done. And just like with the double pendulum, we've gotten the same equations one would obtain with the Lagrangian method. We can rearrange these equations so that acceleration terms appear on one side and all the other terms on the other side. Now you just solve this system for theta and s double dot, and then you're ready for numerical integration method of your choice. And that's it for this video. Leave a like if you liked it, consider subscribing for more. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment, and other than that,